Hello everybody, sythe here, and welcome back to another chill speed paint video. This one was a fun one to work on. The concept for this artwork was interesting because it was one of those artworks where I had a pose in mind and had like a composition and layout in mind, but I didn't have an idea for what character to work on. So a while back I sketched out this exact pose using a 3D model even to help for the referencing, but I didn't know what character to draw for it, so I just kept it as blank for a long time until I was looking through my sketchbook and I remembered a character that I had doodled a while back that I thought would be perfect for this pose, and I decided to give her a name. I decided to name her Alice. I don't literally have any story thing for her. She just kind of exists for this drawing at the moment, but if I do decide to give her her own story and stuff, I will probably update you on that, but for now this is just the character that I'm using for this piece. The way I designed her, I basically just chose a bunch of like random pictures for like her hair and her clothes and stuff to reference, and I used those to create a random character design, and this was the character that I came up with, and I really like her, or I like her design a lot. I feel like she would be kind of like the angrier type, almost like your typical tsundere type, but I don't know if I would classify her as a tsundere. She just wants to be the best, I guess, and stuff. I really don't know much about her. I just reconceptualized her for this drawing. That's pretty much it. But I gave her a cool scythe, as you can tell, and maybe the scythe has some cool story stuff because I kind of drew it to be almost like demon-like. So maybe it's got some story stuff in there. I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about a character that I don't really know much about myself. But I really like her design, and so that's why I decided to draw her here. And the pose was really interesting to line. I was struggling with a few parts of the anatomy because I thought they looked okay in the sketch, but when I went in for the line art, it didn't look quite well. That sometimes happens when I'm drawing for the line art of something. Sometimes the line art will the anatomy will look worse in the line art than it did in the sketch, and I think it's because when you're doing the line art it ends up being more cleaner, and so you can see a lot of the mistakes that you probably didn't see when doing your sketch, because the sketch is a lot messier. But other than those areas, I got the rest of the pose lined pretty well. And as you can see, I'm doing some hatching shading. We love some hatching shading. And the composition of this one is very circular. There's going to be a moon behind her, and the scythe is almost in a circular position. So I was lining everything with I was shading everything where I knew the lighting would be behind her. And filling in the base colors was really interesting because I tried to color match the best I could with the colors that I had in my sketchbook. I colored the initial drawing with colored pencils, which is odd because colored pencils isn't actually it's definitely not my favorite traditional medium to draw in, but it was colored in that. And I kept adjusting the colors as well because obviously this was like my second time drawing her, so it was almost like a second draft of the design. So I remember going back in and changing some things here and there, changing some of the color values, because I noticed when I set them to completely grayscale to check to make sure the values looked all good, I noticed that some of the colors looked like they were blending together a bit too much, and I didn't like how that looked, so I had to make some colors a bit more brighter and some a little more darker in order for that to look good, which is a tip I do recommend if you're starting out drawing, is make sure that your colors have good values to them and they don't all blend too much together. Like if you have your hair color and your skin color and they look almost the exact same value but different shades, it can still blend together depending on the hair and skin color. So it's probably a good idea to change those colors so that they have a bit more contrast. It's actually something I've been considering doing with my character Lai, the pink-haired vampire boy, because I realized that his hair and skin color are very similar in value, which makes it a lot harder to render him because his hair is such a light color. And so I'm probably going to be redesigning that aspect of him probably when the night New Year comes, as sort of like a New Year thing. But now we're in the rendering stages for this character. Like I said, the light is coming mostly from behind her, although it's more of like a room light situation, but I treated it as if it was coming from behind. And yeah, I don't have much to say about the rendering because it's pretty much the same as I usually do. If you want to know like my full rendering and illustration process, you can watch my everything or like how I create an illustration video, my illustration process video. That's still up and still pretty accurate to how I draw, so that's a good video. But yeah, I was shading in the sythe, figuring out how I wanted the highlight to look on the sythe. I still sometimes struggle with shading metals and stuff because I never quite know how to make the highlights look good and how to make like the rendering or like the shading layer blend neatly. But once I figured it out, I moved on with the rest of the piece, again forgetting to add blush before I did the actual shading part, so I had to go back real quick. And you'll see later on that I do change the color of the moon. I just left it there as sort of a placeholder color because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to color it until I got to the lighting phase. But yeah, I don't have too much to say about the rest of this drawing, so I'll probably come back at a later time, and yeah, I'll be back at a later part of the video. So now we're at the stage where I do the top rendering, where I usually go make a clipping layer of the main folder that the character is in, and I do the rest of the rendering. For this one, I did a standard multiply layer on top, which I usually do, but I also did decide to do some very fancy rim lighting. I love rim lighting. I stopped doing that a while back, and I'm not sure why, but I do want to do more like just hard cell shaded rim light, because I always love how it looks. And for the foreground here, I wanted these to look like rocks, and I for some reason forgot how to texture rocks correctly, because I wasn't quite sure how to make them look textured enough, but I eventually figured it out. And later on, I do actually add one more detail, because I thought it just needed an extra detail. I'm not sure if it was the right call to add it, but I added it anyway. And as you can see, I'm going back to my sketching layer so I can figure out how to draw the clouds like I did in the sketch. And again, following the circular composition, I made them look very circular surrounding the moon. I might have gone a little crazy with them, but that's okay. I do like how they ended up looking, and I added some more of these like pink swirly effects. I don't know if these would be clouds or not, but I think they look pretty neat, and I think they look kind of cool. It almost creates like a shine effect to the moon thing that's behind her. I also did a little bit of shading, some shading for the moon to make it not look super flat. And for the rest of the drawing, I was just sort of trying to figure out how to make everything look good and kind of add some final touches. As you can see here, I added a little bit of splatters onto the rock here that could be blood, but I changed it to blue. Not sure why, so it could be like blue alien blood or something. But I was figuring out how to add more blue onto this piece to add a bit more of a contrast. And I added them to the rocks and onto her scythe blade, as well as some effects in the same circular position as everything else. I also added these speed lines that you'll see in comics, and which I'll also do in comics. The circular kind where the focus will be towards the character. Not entirely sure how I feel about those, but I think they add something to the piece. And then I have her holding something in her other hand at the very last minute, which might be like a part of an alien or something. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure about that decision, but I think it looks pretty cool. And that was pretty much it for this piece. I'm sorry I didn't have much to say about this one. I just realized that, most of the rendering and everything kind of spoke for itself, so I just let those play out, and I hope that that's okay. But with that, I have my art shop linked below where you can buy prints like this, and also at mugs. And I have my comics, all three of them, down in the description below, which I somehow didn't mention once before the outro this time. And then I have my Instagram where you can see artworks like this as well. But with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!